Good morning, Rick. How are you doing today?
Hey, Errol, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Dude, I got to dive into your head and heart because, I mean, this book right here has a total impact on readers in the way that, wow, we're going to feel this book. And how many times can we say that about a book that I actually felt it, like I was like right there?
Wow, thanks for that. Yeah. I mean, it's quite a story for sure.
The name of the book is The Devil Behind the Badge, 12 Horrifying Days. I mean, to be a part of this story, that means you, in your own way, had to live it.
Yeah, it took a lot of research, Arrow. I mean, it took me, I worked on this book for about 4.5 years, to be honest. And it was really challenging because all of the victims were marginalized women. They all were sex workers. They had really sort of like debilitating drug addictions. And so the people who actually knew them best were other sex workers. They were drug users and drug dealers. And so it was a matter of me going down to like Laredo over and over and over again, trying to gain trust of some of these people and getting to like know them, and really diving into like the lives of all of these 4 women.
I was going to ask you about that trust because, to build that and to do that research and stuff for it, I mean, you can't just walk into a room and say, hey, I'm putting a book together. I mean, that's just one of the things that I've always learned is that, look, when they first listen, you're going to write a book. And then all of a sudden, that right away, it's like they don't want to talk, but then you get them to talk.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it definitely wasn't easy, right? Because if you walk up to some of these people, like other sex workers, people on the street, if you walk up to them and pull out your notebook and start asking a question, the first thing that they think is what? Is that you're law enforcement, right? And like they want nothing to do with you. And so I had to slowly convince them that no, I'm not into law enforcement. I'm like a writer and I'm like a reporter, and I'm just looking for information about these 4 women. I think it was just sheer number of times that like they saw me down there, like they just kept seeing me over and over and over again. That like they started to get used to me. They started to get a little bit comfortable with me, and slowly but surely started to tell me these amazing story of these 4 women.
Oh. I mean, just Juan David Ortiz. I mean, this man right here was part of the U.S. Customs. These are people that we're supposed to be trusting.
Correct. Yeah, he was a U.S. Border Patrol supervisory agent. He was kind of a rising star. He had been in the agency for about 10 years. It was a supervisory agency in something called the Joint Intel Center. And in this Joint Intel Center, a lot of different agents work from different agencies. They like share information. They share cases. And so, yeah, he basically was like entrusted to basically protect people out on the streets, and he like instead was picking up women, driving them off to these rural stretches, shooting them and leaving them for like dead.
It's one of those things where I have to question my heart in the way of wondering, how does a monster hide his or her identity? I mean, I just don't. It's like, how do they do what they do, but they walk through life like nothing's going on?
I mean, that's the part of the book, to me, that's like the most chilling, right?
Yes.
Because he was not only a Border Patrol supervisory agent, but he was a husband. He was a father of three children, and he would do these things. And he basically told the investigators later that he would do these killings and go right back home and get right into the bed with his wife, as if nothing had happened, and then go to work the next day. And some of his colleagues who were interviewed later basically said that they had noticed this sort of erratic behavior about him, but nobody suspected that he was involved in anything like this, like a serial killing for sure.
Wow. Did they look upon it as being a serial killer? And how long in it did they start saying, oh, wow, this really could be one person doing all this work?
I think that actually came after the second victim,
really?
Claudine Luera. So Claudine Luera was killed about 9 days after the first victim, Melissa Ramirez, and she was found. Her body was actually found just a couple of miles from the first victim's body, So like in the same general vicinity. She also was shot like in the head and neck area, just like the first victim. And not just that, but shot with the same caliber weapon. So there were 40 caliber shells at both of those scenes. And also, like, importantly, both of the victims were known sex workers. They actually knew sort of one another. And so at that point, after the second victim was like found, investigators basically knew that this wasn't some random murder, that these were like connected, and that like Laredo had a serial killer on his hands.
Wow. The thing about it, they always say that serial killers have a pattern, and when you start figuring out the pattern, I mean, it's like that. I mean, even when we had a serial killer here in Charlotte, I mean, it was like when you go back, hindsight is everything. So I can't imagine what you discovered as you continue to dig.
The pattern was like definitely there. The pattern was that he was picking up sex workers, specifically sex workers. He was driving them out to rural areas, and that he was killing them. But interestingly, investigators didn't really have a lot of leads or a lot of clues pointing to him. So they had these other leads. They had other suspects, which they were running down, but nothing really pointing to Juan David Ortiz. The only reason that he got caught really was because he pulled a gun on a would-be fifth victim, Erica Pena, who managed to like escape out of his clutches, kicked out of his truck, and ran off. And it basically occurred like at a gas station, and like at a gas station where a Texas State trooper happened to be pumping gas, and so she ran straight to him, told him about this thing which had happened to her, and that launched the actual manhunt that eventually led to his arrest.
You got a quote here in the book that I know a lot of preachers are going to love, because it really does kind of set up the heart and soul to prepare for what you're about ready to release, and that is from Corinthians. It's 11:13 through 14.
Yeah, I thought that one was really key. When I read that quote, I really felt like it captured everything, because it's basically what he was doing. Yeah. He was working as a U.S. Border Patrol agent, and he also was committing all of these horrible crimes. And that like particular quote talks about Satan disguising himself as an angel of light, and so I felt like it perfectly captured what was happening there.
You went into this story as that journalist, but yet your storytelling capabilities are just mind-blowing. How is it that you're able to shift gears like that, to go from a journalist format into a storyteller?
It's actually a great question, Arrow. I appreciate you asking that. It wasn't easy, because my like entire career has been focused on just getting the actual facts out, making it readable, but making it in sort of newspaper fashion, and to switch your brain into a longer narrative storytelling format was really difficult. But there were so many elements of this story that lended itself to a more sort of cinematic storytelling, right? Because you have all these really interesting characters. You had these stages of things happening. You had these kind of surprise twists. And so once I got the characters up and running, like they almost told the story on their own.
Cormac McCarthy, there's even a quote on that, since we're going to be on quotes here for a couple of seconds, because you've got something here. I study the wolf. The wolf is such a major totem animal in my life. So to hear this, what you put in here about the blood of the slain and how the wolf always knows. I mean, it's like I was so taken in by that comment.
Yeah, I was reading and listening to a lot of Cormac McCarthy while I was researching this book. I'm actually based out of Austin, Texas. And so like Laredo, Texas is about a 4-hour drive. I must have made that drive 25 times or so, right? And so, and like I also went down to like Brownsville, Texas, which is where he was from originally. And so while I was driving along South Texas and driving along the border, like I would listen to these audiobooks, and Cormac McCarthy's The Crossing was actually one of them. and when I heard that, I also it basically also struck me that this kind of perfectly encapsulates what I was researching.
Wow.
That there are people out there who basically kill and thinks that they could continue killing with no consequence, but that there are consequences to that, and it goes far beyond legal consequences. There are, spiritual, and there are personal consequences to everything which you do.
See, this is every bit the reason why I try to get people to write things down, because there are things that they're going to put on that paper that are going to affect people of the future, like yourself with Korma, because, I mean, that came from out of nowhere to become part of this story, which is now inside of me, which will grow beyond me. I mean, I love that kind of, the way that people use their words.
Yeah, I'm really happy to actually hear that, Arrow, because it basically strikes me, and I jotted down, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to use it in the book or not, but then I ended up putting it there, and I'm just glad to hear that it strikes a nerve in somebody else. You know
where else it's going to spark a nerve is the fact that there's a lot of missing Indigenous women in this country, and they're just starting to talk about it. A book like this is going to open up somebody else's life to say, look, he went in, investigated this, he found out who was doing it. We need to do it with our own people in this country as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was honestly one of the driving forces to do this book. To be honest, Arrow, is that once I started learning about these victims, once I started realizing that they had these really rich lives, that they had families who really loved them, families who never actually gave up on them, by the way, to the very end, families who really wanted to get them cleaned up, wanted to get them off the streets, that these were people, that they were that they were more than just their labels of sex workers, that they had these really rich lives behind them. Wow. That's what really drove me to expand this into a book, to be honest.
See, and the thing is that listeners who haven't read the book yet, they need to go pick it up at a bookstore and really open it up and study the four faces of the women that you put in there. And the reason why is because those are people that we have probably met along the way, or somebody who looks just like them, and that we shouldn't just sit there and assume, don't judge a book by its cover. Go in and find out what their lives are all about.
Yeah, there was a sense early on after the first press conference and some of the early reports, that yes, these were sex workers, and that yes, this was all tragic, but it's part of the risk of being a sex worker, right? That they place themselves in these dangerous situations and stuff like this happens. And so I kind of wanted to go beyond that. I had a suspicion that there was more there, and there definitely was. And just kind of digging into it, learning about them, finding about them, and talking to their families, getting to know them, really opened up these whole different worlds about who these people were.
Yeah. I mean, because every family knows that if they've got somebody who has gone through this, in other words, being a sex worker, that they can only help so much. But I just wish people could help even more than just so much. Because, I mean, they're human lives. Dead or alive, it was still a human life, and their legacy continues.
Yeah, I think that this book is just as much about marginalized women and substance abuse disorder and the lack of care in some of these actual communities than it is about the actual murders, because all of them to a T, all four victims at one point in their lives voiced the ambition to get off of the streets. They all wanted off the streets.
Yeah. Yep.
None of them wanted to be there. They all had, three of the four had children. And so they all wanted to reconnect with their children. They all wanted to get off drugs. But, at least at the time, Laredo didn't have an overnight addiction center. So the closest place that they could go was 3 hours away in Corpus Christi. So the there wasn't enough support structure in that immediate area to truly help them get off the street. So it was like mostly up to their families, and their families tried. A lot of them tried. Claudine Luera's family literally drove her to Corpus Christi just a couple of months before and placed her into that rehab center. Unfortunately, she didn't last long there. She lasted just a couple of days and then left. All of them had really bad drug addictions, including black tar heroin.
Yeah.
And it just like got a hold of them.
Wow. When you write a book as powerful as this, you know that there are listeners and readers that are going to say, I need help. Is there some place where they can go to get that help? Because they want to make the changes, but if they have to drive 3 hours, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, and that's actually, changing quite a bit. I know that there was that there were like basically initiatives down in Laredo to come up with better support systems. There are counselors down there who do hit the streets and try to help people who are in the throes of drug addiction. But there are also like 1-800 numbers you can call and national hotlines that you could call and try to get almost immediate help.
Wow. Rick, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future, because this is something that needs a continuation, even if it's, promoting your next book or just having a conversation about this so we can get people to talk.
I would love to do that, Errol. Thank you.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Thank you, Errol.